Today I'll show you how to groom your cavoodle's face, demonstrating on my dog Soda. So Soda has already had a pre-brush, I've given her a bath, and I've also blow-dried her fur. Now I'm going to give her another brush with my slicker brush, just to remove any lingering knots or mats. First, I gently brush the outside of her ears, followed by the inside. Just be careful because the wires of the brush can scratch your dog's skin, so when you're doing the inside of the ears, just brush the ends where the fur is. To hold Soda still, I'm just holding the fur under her chin. I'll link to a video here demonstrating 3 different holds you can try to keep your dog still while grooming their face. I've just brushed through her muzzle on both sides of her face, then her other ear. I've brushed the outside and now just brush through the inside of the ear. If you find any knots or mats, keep brushing or use a dematting tool. I'll list the product I use in the video description below. And lastly, I finished by brushing the top of her head. I've groomed the rest of Soda's body using a number 4 comb, which trims to the length of 13mm or half an inch. I'm going to trim her hair the same length. If you're after a cute teddy bear look, I suggest using a comb that's 2 lengths longer on the head than the body. For example, when I groom dogs short for summer, I typically use a number 2 comb on their body, which trims to the length of 6mm or a quarter of an inch. I'm holding Soda around her muzzle to keep her still. I've brushed the fur over her eyes and I've carefully placed the clippers just above her eyes, and I'm gliding them over the top of the head to the base of her neck. Once I've trimmed the top of her head, I'll flip over one of her ears and run the clippers down the side of her face, just 1 clipper width wide, making sure I don't trim any of her ear fur. Once I finish this, I'll repeat the same thing on the other side of her face. In grooming, what you do once, you do twice. So I brush the fur on Soda's head over her eyes again, and then I glide over her head with the clippers to trim any fur I've missed the first time. Now I'll trim the fur between Soda's eyes. Next, I like to flip over the dog's ear to get it out of the way so I don't accidentally trim any fur from their ear. Next, pick up your comb and gently comb your dog's fringe away from their eyes, and comb through their muzzle to double check for any knots or tangles. Now, using the comb, lift up the fur that sticks out from the corner of the eye by combing the fur towards you and then away from you towards the eye. Now that the fur has been lifted, open up your straight scissors and place them on the fur you've lifted up, resting them on your dog and pointing the end of the scissors towards the stop, which is the area between their eyes, and very gently cut. Now with grooming, what you do once, you always do twice to ensure you don't miss any fur. So lift the fur up again using your comb. Comb away from the eye, comb towards the eye, and cut. Now repeat the same thing on the other side of the face. You'll notice I'm using a couple of holds to keep Soda's face still. I'm alternating between holding her by the fur underneath her chin, so her beard fur essentially, and wrapping my forefinger and thumb lightly around her muzzle. Give both holds a go and see which is more comfortable for you and your dog. Trimming your dog's face can be a bit tricky, especially if they're not used to it, so I recommend grooming them straight after a long walk so they're a little bit tired, and if possible, ask someone to help hold them for you and feed them treats as you go. For Soda's fringe, I use my fine-tooth comb to comb the fur on top of her head over her eyes. When trimming the fringe, you trim from the outer corner of one eye, around the head to the outer corner of the other eye, in a curve shaped like a visor. I get my curved scissors and move Soda's ear out of the way so I don't accidentally cut any of her ear fur. I start trimming at the corner of her eye very carefully, ensuring I also trim her eyelashes along with her fur. I move her head around using my muzzle grip as I trim, making sure I keep the ends of the scissors away from her eyes. In grooming, what you do once, you do twice, so I'll do this again. I'll comb down her fur and trim any fur that I've missed. As you can see, I've missed some of her right eyelashes, so I'll trim again from the corner of her left eye to the corner of her right eye, making sure I trim those eyelashes. Here you go, I'll just trim the eyelashes now. Now, if your dog has any fur sticking up on their nose, obstructing their view, just get your comb and comb it gently, then place your scissors down the middle of their nose and trim gently. If you can still see goop in the corner of your dog's eyes, cut the fur underneath the goop to remove it. You'll notice in this video the scissors I'm using have a pointed tip. I'm not using scissors with a rounded tip because I've sent my pair off to be sharpened. However, I highly recommend using rounded tip for beginners because they're a lot safer. Okay, now you're nearly finished. Just trim any remaining fur that's sticking out around the corner of the eyes, along the nose, or in between the eyes. Then check to make sure the fur looks even on both sides, and then you're done. To groom Soda's muzzle, I grab my slicker brush and flip her ear back to get it out of the way. I brush through her muzzle fur, checking for any knots or mats, and then I brush it in the opposite direction to lift the fur away from her neck. Using my curved scissors, I trim the fur from the bottom of her mouth to the bottom of her ear in a curved line. What you do once you do twice, so I'll brush the fur again to find any hair that I've missed. And then I'll trim any fur that's poking out along that curved line again. If you're not sure how close you are to the skin, use your fingers to feel for the skin to avoid cutting too close. And you'll see I've trimmed this quite rough. That's because I'm going to go over it again with the thinning shears. I'll repeat the same process on the other side. Since I'm right-handed, I find trimming the right side a bit more difficult than the left. I find it easier to trim this side in the opposite direction, going from the corner of the ear to the corner of the mouth. I'll flip over Soda's ear to get it out of the way and brush through her muzzle. If you feel any knots, use your dematting tool to get the knots out. Then I trim in a curved line from the corner of her ear to the corner of her mouth. I'll brush the muzzle again and trim any fur that's poking out that I've missed. Now it's time to trim Soda's beard. So holding the top of Soda's muzzle, I'll brush the fur down both sides of her face. Then using my curved scissors, I'll trim the fur underneath her beard so it's even on both sides. Lifting up her head to stretch her neck, I then trim any fur that I've missed. I'll then repeat the process again, so I'll brush down the fur on both sides of her face, and then with my curved scissors, I'll trim any fur that's poking out. Now it's time to use my thinning shears along the curve of Soda's muzzle to blend and soften any of the blunt trimming lines. Soda also has really thick curly fur, which can make her muzzle look quite bulky, so the thinning shears will help to thin out that fur. I first brush through her muzzle, and then I trim the fur that's sticking out. This side looks good to me, so I'll turn her head round and I'll do the same thing on the other side of her muzzle. Lastly, I'll groom Soda's ears. I've already trimmed the left ear, so I'll show you how to groom her right ear. I give it a quick brush and then I flip it over. Cavoodles and many breeds with long ears are prone to getting ear infections, so trimming the fur under the ear opening can help with airflow and prevent moisture buildup. I use my straight scissors for this, but be very careful as the sound so close to the ears can make your dog react like Soda has and shake their head. I'll give her ear a quick brush again. And then on the inside of the ear, you can feel where the ear leather ends. So when you're trimming the ears, always use your finger to feel where the leather ends so you don't accidentally cut it. Using my curved scissors, I hold the end of Soda's ear leather with my thumb and trim the fur underneath my fingers in a curved line. If you prefer a straight look, you can just use your straight scissors and trim straight across the end of the ears. I'll do this again, so I'll brush Soda's ear with this slicker brush, and then with my curved scissors, I'll trim any fur that's poking out so the ear is even. And now I've finished. Here's a before and after of Soda. Her face looks a lot neater and there isn't any fur restricting her view anymore.